Welcome to the Proven Principles podcast by Knowing Hospitality, the show that deconstructs and demystifies the inner workings of the hotel industry. Here's your host, Adam Knight.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the show. My guest today is David Grossman. He's the president of Renue Systems. This is a commercial cleaning company that works with some of the biggest hospitality brands in the world. And I wanted to get his take not just on housekeeping operations and how they're evolving with the times, but what it's like to run a big national company that's responsible for providing clean, safe environments for hotel guests and for employees. So we cover a lot of ground. David's got great perspective and great insight on what's happening. So I hope you enjoy the show. Let's just get right to it. David Grossman, president of Renue Systems. Enjoy. Hey, David, welcome to the show. It's great to have you.
It's great to be here.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking some time today. So I think before we dive too deep into the show today, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about who you are, how you started Renue Systems, what Renue Systems is all about, maybe the kind of the origin story, as it were.
Sure. And I'll try to keep it fairly brief because every company has its own folklore. But Adam, it's good to be here and good to be here with everyone out listening. My name is David Grossman. I head up a company called Renue Systems. We've been in existence for almost 30 years now. We started, our founder, who's still very much engaged, was 21 at the time, who taught himself how to clean carpets for homes and restaurants and pretty much anyone else who would let him in. And this was outside of Chicago. One day was asked to clean a hotel, and ever since then, when the light bulb went off, we went on a different course. So we started out as a general cleaning company, but very competitive business. So we decided to specialize, and after cleaning a hotel and then a second one, we decided that's the path to go. So we can clean a lot of different services, a lot of different types of customers, and we still do some, but our focus is heavily on the hospitality industry. So we've cleaned thousands of hotels across the U.S. and now in several other countries. And what we do is the deep cleaning aspect. So we're not the everyday housekeeping or the third shift janitorial, but rather we'll come in periodically with a team of well-trained technicians and heavy-duty equipment and our proprietary chemicals and processes to take care of almost anything inside a property, from the carpets to the marble, to the odors, to the stains. And we keep adding services, some of our newer services, as we identify a need among our customers. Our mattress cleaning, as well as recycling, chandelier cleaning, and even linen and trash chute cleaning. So very wide variety. One of the advantages of focusing on the hospitality industry, or just one industry in general, is you get to know your customers well, how they operate, what their demands are, what their needs are, and how to best accommodate them. And so that's what we've been doing, and developed some very nice relationships, as well as reputation, and which we don't take lightly, among many properties at the corporate and regional level, but also and importantly at the individual property level with management. So that's what our company does. We've grown geographically from that one office outside of Chicago, which is still company owned and operated, to now franchising, and we have 30 locations. We typically give out very large territories, so one location can handle a whole metropolitan area or even larger. So we cover almost all the U.S. And we, a couple of years ago, started expanding beyond our borders. So we're in several countries and looking to continue to fill out the U.S. locally and then internationally. And our franchisees, why we have that structure is we find if we bring in good franchisees, then we get the best of both worlds for our customers, because they get the attention of the individual owner operator, who's clearly very vested to make happy customers, but yet benefit from the experience of corporate, having done this for almost 30 years and serves thousands of customers. And we do lots of R&D and lots of development of new services that we then pass on to our franchisees. I joined the company 10 years ago. Previously, I was in consulting and then in private equity. So I'd help advise and then invest in companies, but always on behalf of a big company. And I was looking for many years for a opportunity where I could get involved with a nice company and just have a lot more involvement with it as an operator. And took me almost 10 years and found Renue. Actually had a different name back then. Good company. We just probably were a little bit sleepy. So over the past 10 years, we've just put our heads down and put more energy into the company. And we've had some nice growth as a result. I'll take very little of that credit. Some of it's luck and some of it's a great team. And we've just been out in pretty good growth mode, and still thinking we've got a lot more we can do, and very excited for the future.
I mean, that's the dream, isn't it? Looking ahead, and you kind of see a bright future in spite of everything that's going on right now. But with COVID and all of whether it's the new regulations or whether it's the new just ways of hotels operating in these times, I would imagine a company like yours would be to not just benefit from it, because I don't want it to sound like it's all about growth in that, but you're really helping people these days, through this pandemic.
Yeah. This has certainly been an interesting year, and we had good growth last year. Coming into this year, the first 2 months were strong, and then we hit the brick wall, right? As our customers closed down and are essentially closed down as all the guests left. And that certainly had a big impact on us, and we've pivoted a lot over the time, and we're seeing some nice momentum now. We're not where we want to be nor expect to be, but we're moving in the right direction. And you're right, Adam. One thing that we've been really pleased about is we've got heavily into the disinfecting and sanitizing. That's something that we already had offered for the past several years, but it was not something that was just desired for sort of obvious reasons. But now it is, and you're right, as we go in and do a lot of preventative work for hotels, and even outside hotels. We're doing a lot of retirement communities, assisted living facilities kind of come to us needing our service. And then we also do some positive cases when there's a hit, and we've got our technicians well trained how to do that, and well comfortable going into those situations. And we go in as quickly as we can. We're well protected and try to clean it out. But what we really try to pitch, to your point about helping the customers, is yes, we'll be there if you have a positive situation, but we really want to try to get ahead of the curve and do more on the preventative side, which is never going to be 100%, but view it like a vaccine. It'll minimize the likelihood of getting a positive case, and if you have one, it'll probably be less rampant as a result. So that's what we've done, and just adding to the craziness of this year and just the tragedies of the year. The storms right now going on real time down in the Gulf. We're actually been mobilizing a lot of work, taking care of hotels that are housing evacuees from the storm. So we're taking care of those, as well as, and that's even extended to other states. So we've done a lot of that. We've done a lot of hotels that are also housing, serving as hospitals now because of the virus. So it's just been an incredible year, and just a devastating year for all of us. And we're just very thankful that we've been able to keep going and in some cases make a positive impact.
Yeah. You've got such great reach in the company. You've got eyes and ears in a lot of different areas, a lot of different regions. What are you just seeing out there, generally speaking, your perspective on what's happening in the market at large? Are there different, I guess the crux of the question is, from a regional perspective or different jurisdiction perspective, you've got different government regulations and how things are supposed to go, whether it's reopening restaurants or reopening hotels, capacity limitations. Some governments are more strict than others. Some companies are maybe more strict than others. You've got brand standards. There's a lot of things at play.
Sure.
So what are you kind of seeing under that big umbrella?
Yeah, it's kind of a patchwork. Since you're right, you've got brands and different owners having their different requirements, their preferences, and then you're right, geography plays a big impact, and right now it's just so reactive. I mean, we're just 6 months into this, at least in the States, a little longer outside the States. So there's really still, I think properties are starting to catch their breath a little bit, but still very reactive there, and haven't been able to sit back too much and kind of look at kind of at a global level what are the best practices. So we'll work with our properties, whether they have a formal plan or not a formal plan. We can try to help them devise a formal plan, and we're trying to be very flexible, say with budgeting, because we know that's an issue. So we try to be very flexible with about payment cycles, extending those out, things like that. But yeah, there is a wide variety. I mean, some parts of, just focusing on the U.S., are clearly coming back stronger than others, and even within certain markets, certain types of hotels, and the big. I'm not saying anything that followers of the industry don't know, but certainly the large cities, particularly that are heavily dependent based on group travel and meetings, having a lot more challenging time. So we're trying to go where we're needed, and then work to their brand standards. And again, in some cases, we'll come in and give advice on that, and whether it's using our disinfecting processes or not. We're trying to be very flexible with our customers. But I would say, kind of as a general view, that again, the catching the breath is probably a good way of looking at it. Starting to get looking a little bit further in the future, but it's so hard to predict what the next turn is going to be. I mean, you just don't know. The way I look at it is that we don't even know what tomorrow's going to be, but tomorrow compared to today, I just know we're going to be one day closer to the end of this.
I mean, I like that way of looking at it, trying to stay optimistic and not get pulled down into the negativity that's so easy to happen right now. But the catching your breath is a really good, I mean, that painted a really good picture for me. I mean, I can remember being back in hotels on the front lines, and you kind of go through a crazy period, and you're not really out of the busy time, or maybe you're back to back with big groups or whatever the situation is. You have the second to kind of catch your breath. Hopefully you can do a bit of we would call them after action reports, but you sort of dissect what you went through, how you can at least, like, what did you learn? What did you learn didn't work? And then maybe change your perspective going forward for, the next busy period. It kind of feels like that's where we are right now. After Labor Day, everyone's just sort of taking stock and figuring out what the rest of the year looks like.
Yeah, I think that's right. Especially, I think the realization is we're going to be in this situation, not for a few more days or a few more weeks, but it's going to extend beyond that, and just trying to navigate that environment and get used to it, and doing so with such a limited staff, which presents its own challenges. Of course, it's sad that there's so many people that have lost their jobs, or are working in a much lesser capacity. It's horrible for so many people, and those that are fortunate to have their jobs, many cases are just working a lot harder, and just trying to keep things going. So we're trying to work in that environment as well.
Yeah, housekeeping and public area cleanliness is one of those departments and job functions in a hotel that, in my opinion, is the hardest working division at a property. In good times, you've got housekeepers that are covering a lot of rooms and doing a lot of the number of cleanliness duties in a room over the years just seems to have slowly ramped, kicked off. obviously this situation has changed housekeeping operations probably fundamentally forever, but we may not have a lot of clarity on what that change is yet, because everyone's just kind of scrambling and trying to wipe everything down and have at least an operation where nothing is missed. And hopefully people come to work, the ones that are working. But from your perspective, I'm curious to hear, where you see housekeeping operations changing as we move through this. So is there anything that may be starting to show itself, I guess, through the darkness of this?
Yeah, I think your comment about the trend of housekeeping taking on more and more work, I think it's only continuing right now. Mm-hmm. Now, I think going into the rooms less frequently, not only because there's lower occupancy, but it's more of much less during a stay and a much longer visit to a room when there's a checkout. So it's really in many cases there's no housekeeping going on while there's a stay. So the housekeeping staff just have much more to do on less frequently, but much more to do, and still have a tight quota to make. So and I think a lot of the rooms are getting beat up more than they were. In some cases, there's a different clientele than a hotel's used to. So we're seeing that quite a bit, and sometimes the housekeeping staff is not really sort of trained or have the equipment and outfitted to do these things like smoking stain, odors and things of that nature, and just a lot more damage to the room. So we're seeing that quite a bit, and sometimes we'll go in and do those situations. But I think that's an issue, and of course we're seeing them more frequently. They're just more visible in the property. In the past, wanted to keep them kind of not hidden, but not overly visible in front of the guests, but now there's a lot more of that, and we're being asked to do that as well. Some of the on a similar note, because often the property won't do this or doesn't want to or doesn't have the equipment to do themselves. A lot of this disinfecting work, we often use electrostatic sprayers, and we're called in not only to help the guests, but we're called in a lot to make it a safer place for the employees. So we'll do a lot of the back office work as well, and the hotel management wants that to be known that that's happening. So we've created, as an example, some nice literature, pop-up tents and things like that the hotel can place to give comfort to their employees as well as their guests, that the hotel is being frequently cleaned and disinfecting, and it's a safe environment. So I think like that is something that we're going to see, at least for the foreseeable future, is some sort of sense, whether it's certifications or just some literature showing that it's being well cleaned, and maybe it's being done in-house, or maybe it's being done by a certified third party.
Yeah. Your point about cleaning back of house is an interesting one, because we see so many marketing images and these campaigns that hotel companies are engaging right now, where it's basically a different version of the same program, but it's all geared at convincing guests coming in that, the front of house is clean. But we don't talk about how many employees the guests are probably going to interact with one way or another during their stay, and making sure back of house are clean and there's good hygiene and health practices as people are walking in the door when they go in the staff entrance by the loading dock. That is as important as what's going on in front of house. I think it's a really interesting point.
Yeah, we're seeing that, and a lot of what we're talking about clearly is happening during this, I don't know if I want to call it transition period, but during this pandemic period. And then when we do reach when we do have this under control and we come back more towards what was the past, it's unclear if these trends will stay. Will there be regular disinfecting of hotels, as an example? I just think there's a lot of unanswered questions now.
We've got the issue, and you alluded to it earlier, hotels running on smaller teams. And, that is probably going to be the MO until guests start to return and rates just increase a little bit and cash flow gets a little bit better. So one of the ways that I think hotels can contend with dealing or working with smaller teams is you've got to find more efficient ways of doing the work. Are there any tools that your company is using or promoting into the field that's making housekeeping operations a little bit better to deal with on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, it's a good question when we think a lot about how to help our customers even further, particularly in today's world. Of course, we'll come in maybe even for smaller jobs than we had in the past, right? A couple rooms, smoking rooms or things like that, where, in the past we tried to, group it into bigger projects, but we understand the world now, and if our customers need it, we're going to try to bend over backwards to do those things, because they often don't have the staff or the equipment. The budgets are tight to do those. So that's one thing. We're also keeping track more of the actual work that we're doing. In many cases in the past, the hotels wanted to keep track. We do these rooms today, these rooms tomorrow. We're playing more of a role in that to help them. So we make sure that we can handle and address the entire property or the parts of the job that we're wanting, because we realize that they're just being stretched. So those are things like that. There's, equipment. We're kind of being more of a consultant now about, hey, they're thinking about buying any piece of equipment. Can we help them or with that, or give them some advice? So things like that, and even some of the training on the equipment, as an example, are things that we can help with. Often they'll then say, hey, why don't you guys do the job for us? Even if it's a small job, we'll try to help them. But we're trying to really, because we know there's been a lot of turnover, and maybe the people that were originally trained to do the deep cleaning are no longer there. So we'll either do it for them, or we'll try to help our property, maybe try to educate them so they can do some of the work themselves.
Yeah, bringing in outside third parties and outsourcing project work in hospitality is something that, depending on the type of work that's being done, you said earlier, there's companies out there that bring in third shift and they cover, that overnight cleaning in hotels. And maybe that'll be an outside company, not done in-house. But by and large, hospitality over the years has resisted bringing in outside consultants to help with things for whatever reason. But one of the trends that I'm seeing, and this isn't a sales pitch for either of our services here, but it's just, we're seeing it is bringing in outside people to help with these problems and just provide maybe another set of eyes to look at something to provide some guidance. And I would think that a company like yours is in a really good position to be able to do that. Again, not a sales pitch, but this is an opportunity for hotel managers out there to look at the expertise that isn't necessarily either in your building or with your flag to help you through this.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's a good opportunity to take a step back and say, how can we be more efficient? And we've done that in our company, where we've found some ways of streamlining operations. I mean, this is a good opportunity to kind of take a deep look at your business and, what have we been doing in the past? Maybe that's not in every situation what we should be doing in the future. And are we using our resources, our people, our time, our money? Are we using those in the right way, the budgeting? So certainly same thing with our customers. I mean, you're right. I think by and large, a lot of work was being, in the old days, done internally by hotels. Probably a slight trend to go the other direction, to outsource, as we're seeing in pretty much all other sectors of the economy. But my sense is now, with such a streamlined staff or skinny staff at many hotels, they're probably that outsourcing trend, again, affecting your business and my business, will probably be accelerated I think to your point earlier that hotels, and we've got some evidence to believe this will be slower in ramping up their hiring, so they may rely more on outsiders, and whether that's just temporary or kind of a new structure going forward is to be determined.
TBD, yeah, exactly.
It's running, as you know, Adam, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but running a hotel is, boy, that is not easy. I mean, you've got so many tasks to do, and if you can outsource a couple of them to a go-to partner that you're not going to have to micromanage, you're not going to have to looking over their shoulder to make sure the job's done right, and it's going to get done right and on time. That's very helpful, so you can focus on running your property, right?
That's exactly right. And oftentimes it can be more economical than trying to find all of the, whether you have the expertise in house or not. Often you're either having to hire somebody or you're diverting somebody from another function to take over something else. So you're not, their plate is the same size. You're just overflowing their plate. Yeah. So then, their whatever their responsibilities are divided. I'm curious to get your take on this, in times of, as a person who heads up a big company, in times of crisis, people often look to leadership to provide guidance, stability, make them feel better, visibility on what's going on, whatever the thing is they need. I'm curious just to know from your perspective, how have you handled all of this? Being in that chair, it's lonely at the top. And this is one of those times where it can be. How have things been going for you? Yeah,
it's, thank you for asking. It has been a challenging year, needless to say. So certainly come March and April, when much of our business shut down, and I was very concerned, particularly for some of our newer, younger franchisees that had a smaller customer base and just were less experienced in our business, because almost all our franchisees come from totally different backgrounds than hospitality industry, cleaning, and generally that's worked out well. So I was very focused on it, and it was not an easy time. We worked hard on a few areas. One is trying to over communicate, and even if we didn't have a lot to say, we'd do company-wide Zoom sessions and then individual calls, and we do those. We do those anyway in the past, but much more frequently. And again, even if we didn't have much to say, we'd share whatever information we were seeing from our perch, and we'd love to share what everybody else was seeing, so that our different offices could help each other with maybe some tips, some advice, what they're seeing. But I think it was very important for me to at least try to collect as much information I could see out in the field and disseminate that. So that was very helpful. Share best practices. What was another, what services, as an example, are being most desired, which types of properties, things like that, new sort of equipment or chemicals that we could use in certain situations. So over communication, we try to be honest about it. I mean, on one hand, you want to be a cheerleader, but you don't want to. You want to paint sort of a realistic picture and try to give people hope. So we did that. We worked really hard with that. We gave them a lot of financial advice. In our days, since we're a service business without a big retail front and fancy office, we really didn't have a lot of overhead, most of our offices. So that was very helpful. Can kind of hunker down, and now we've been rebuilding recently, but we're able to do that. So I think it was the communication, our help on is trying to double down on our marketing to help our franchisees, sharing advice, getting everybody to communicate more and more with each other. It's also kind of accelerated our plans to some of the other new services that we're planning to launch. We've kind of accelerated those. So I think that was a lot of it, is trying to tell people, have our franchisees kind of understand that we were here to really try to help them. Not saying we could, clearly make the pandemic go away, but there are limits. But at least we were there. We were fighting for them, fighting alongside them, feeling the same thing, because I have a company-owned location as well, so I was feeling it every day as well. And I think that those were some of the things that helped. and I'm really glad that of our 30 franchisees, we haven't, knock on wood, lost one this year because
wow.
So
That's unbelievable.
I'm really pleased about that. And we've got great people, and I think that came through.
A little bit of good news out of all of this. Yeah, that's good to hear. Are there any resources that you have found that have helped you and your company through this that might be valuable for other people to look at as well?
Yeah, well, the thing that I've been looking for on this, I mean, I read a lot anyways, read a lot of periodicals, lots of newspapers, trade journals, and even non-trade journals. I would say as far as the pandemic, what I've been looking at, which has been fairly helpful, is the Chinese market. Because they're really, they hit the pandemic, hit them first, of course, and really about 3 months ahead of us. And then they did their hotel market was shut down big time, and now is on the upswing. So it's not a perfect analogy, say, to the States or even Europe or pretty much the rest of the world, because of the shutdown that was much stronger there. But there's a lot of similarities, and their market's coming very strong. And the big hotel chains, if you ask them, I mean, and look at the SDR numbers, they're really come back very nicely in China now. The economy in general, and certainly the hospitality industry. And there's a lot of parallels there with the U.S., particularly because they have a huge percentage of their market is domestic travel, just like it is in the States. So there's some parallels there that we see, and it's really pointing to a nice recovery in China. And I think ultimately that recovery and trajectory may happen longer here in Europe, but take longer to get there. But I think is very positive. And you can look at some of the details as to how the hotels have actually overcome the pandemic.
Yeah, I like that. It's a little bit of a roadmap. Maybe you don't follow. You might take a different trail, but you're going in the same direction. Yeah, I like that. One of the things that has been so beneficial out of this pandemic, I think, for people in just about every profession, is just the volume of content that has been put out there. So you can spend your entire week on webinars and joining different meetings and discussion groups and reading studies and opinion pieces. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff out there. So you never know what you're going to get from a piece of content. Try to absorb as much as you can.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And keeping in mind that this virus is new. It's less than a year old, and we just don't really know how it behaves, frankly.
Right.
And we're getting better at treating it, but we just don't know how it behaves. So yes, I agree with you. It's good to get a lot of different perspectives and data, but I think there certainly still is an element of uncertainty.
For sure. Yeah, there's no doubt. Before we wrap the show here, a bit of a personal question for you, if you don't mind.
Sure.
What are you looking forward to when this is all said and done? What do you miss?
From a professional perspective, I'd love going out and visiting franchisees, and clearly that's been cut back significantly. I'd like to go see everyone at least once a year, wherever they are located, and I really miss that. Also visit, and we visit customers, and then I make special visits to some of our other customers as well. So I love doing that. Certainly my team in our office, our home office in Chicago, I've been able to see them, but not nearly as much. So it's really the people I miss a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to hitting the road, which I've been starting to do recently. But I'm looking forward to doing that more and getting out there and seeing our team.
Nice. I had this moment probably a month ago where I was walking past a restaurant in Seattle that sort of has this indoor-outdoor feeling to it. You got to open everything up, and I walked by, and for the first time, I realized for the first time in several months that I was aware that there was like clanking of dishes and bussers clearing tables and all that, and I realized, man, I miss this energy. Yeah, you don't realize it till you hear it, and you're like, oh yeah, I haven't heard that for a while. But we'll get through this. There's no doubt about it. Yeah. David, if people want to learn more about you or Renue Systems, where should they go?
Great place is our website. So it's
Okay.
renuesystems.com. Renue is spelled R-E-N-U-E. So renuesystems.com. Renew is in like renew your venue. So renuesystems.com is a great place to get information. You can find our contact information. Feel free to call, email, text me really at any time, whether it's something specific we talked about here, something about Renue, or just in general, you just have a question. I'm always glad to meet people and have some nice conversations.
Sounds great. David, thanks so much for joining the show today. It was great having you on. Thanks for your insight.
My pleasure, Adam. Keep up the good work.
Appreciate it. All right.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to the show. If you want to learn more about Renue Systems or get in touch with David, just head over to their website, renuesystems.com. I'll link to it in the show notes. As for us, if you haven't had a chance to leave a rating or a review, I'd appreciate if you took a couple seconds to hop over to your podcast app and do that. It just helps us put together better content, and it helps the show get found for new listeners. You know, the way some of these search algorithms work, if you don't have enough ratings or reviews, you don't even populate when people search for the show. It makes it a lot harder for new users to find you. So we want to try to help as many people as possible through this pandemic. So ratings and reviews will help us get there. So thanks in advance for taking a couple seconds to do that. You can head over to knowinghospitality.com to find past shows, show notes, and more information about the services that Knowing Hospitality provides. Thanks again for listening, everyone. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to the Proven Principles podcast with Adam Knight. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss a show. The podcast is brought to you by Knowing Hospitality, a full-service hotel management company that puts your performance first by rethinking the management model. Visit knowinghospitality.com to learn more. Until next time.